Okay, everybody, let's get started. We've got the Judiciary Committee scheduled to come in here and take up some heavy lifting at 9:30, and we've got 6 or 7 folks who want to speak to the legislation before local government. So with that, we'll gavel in local government, and if you can call the roll.
Senator Hanger, Senator Stanley, Senator Favola, here. Senator DeSteff, Senator Donovan, Senator Chase,
here. Present.
Senator McPike, here. Senator Howe, Senator Spruill, Senator Morrissey, Senator Pillion, here. Senator Bell, here. Senator Hashmi, here. Senator Kiggins,
here.
Senator Lewis,
here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right. All right, folks, all the other committees were meeting, and I didn't want to deprive us of having the same opportunity. So we have 2 pieces of legislation in front of us. We have Senator Deeds, it's 5044, and we have my 5106. And so the first order of business after consultation with Senator Deeds is we're going to roll 5044 into 5106. And so I think, Senator, Senator McPike. So moved. All right, moved and seconded that we roll 5044 into 5106. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so we have one bill in front of us now, and that's 5106. I'll go ahead and present 5106 from here. 5106 is a very simple bill. If you look at it in concept, you can tell essentially with the great pandemic has come great uncertainty. Office buildings, government office buildings have been closed. There's been limited access even after they were sort of reopened. Review and approval of plans, plats, permits, and et cetera has been delayed. Also, construction times and timelines have been delayed. People have been reluctant to have construction crews assembled in sites out of fear of violating the rules against congregate settings or congregate meetings, gatherings. So what we have in 5106 is a temporary stopgap measure that allows a couple of extra years for these site plans and for these projects to move forward. For local governments, it preserves these economic development opportunities that are represented by these projects. So any special use permit, conditional use permit, special exception, rezoning approval, all those things are held valid until July 1, 2022, provided, of course, that the required financial commitments remain in effect as well as performance bonds. Anything outstanding as of July 1, and this goes back to anything outstanding as of July 1, 2020, and extends that out to July 1, 2022. It can be even longer than that if the locality agrees. This also includes performance of proffered economic project, proffered obligations as well that are coexistent with these projects. So it's a pretty simple bill in concept. We're doing this, as we all know, trying to do this with as many segments of our economy as we can, given the unparalleled or unheard of effects this has had on all segments of our economy. And so I think this is an important measure to see how this plays out and to give these projects some added life. So that's the bill. And if anybody has anything they want to say, other than that, we've got folks signed up to present both sides, pro and con, as to Senate Bill 5106. Any questions? All right, with that, we're going to start with a sign-up sheet, and first up is Eldon James. Eldon?
They're not in the room, Senator.
Not in the room. You got to be in the room to play. So, is anybody in the room?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who's in the room currently?
Andrew Clark.
Is Dan Holmes in the room?
Yes, I am, sir.
All right. Why don't we go with you, Dan? We'll start with you first.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the bill. My name is Dan Holmes. I'm here on behalf of the Piedmont Environmental Council. We are opposed to the legislation for the following reasons.
See, he can't think of any.
Well,
Dan, we lost
you.
Dan, you're going to have to start over.
All right, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, we've got you now. You're going to have to start over.
Okay, I will be quick. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The expiration date, we're opposed to the legislation. My name is Dan Holmes. I'm here on behalf of Piedmont Environmental Council. We're opposed for the following reasons. The expiration date was July 1st of this year, so this would be a retroactive extension, and we believe the regular session was the place for this discussion. Understanding that there has been a pandemic since the regular session in 2020, we just want to say that we don't believe that the hardship, that there has been a huge hardship under the pandemic. We would argue that the housing market appears to be doing well in spite of the pandemic, and local governments continue to process land use matters during this time. In addition, the pandemic is demonstrating a change in land use patterns and commuting patterns. Extending what is often stale zoning is not a solution. We should be reimagining these sites in hopes to see better proposals occur, ones that are more reflective of the challenges we know face the Commonwealth: affordable housing, access to parks, etc. Extension has been going on for years. The 2008 housing crisis may have necessitated earlier extensions, but we have been extending these plat approvals for some 12 years now. Some of these plats may date back to as far back as 2006. If there was ever a time to get rid of stale zoning, we believe it is now. Lastly, most local governments have a process for extensions. I would argue these decisions are best handled on a case-by-case basis at the local level. And for those reasons, we would ask that you oppose the legislation. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dan. Has Eldon joined the room yet? Eldon James?
No, sir.
No, sir? Okay. All right, next up, we'll do Clayton Medford. Is he in the room?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Clayton Medford with the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Just very briefly want to say we support the bill and support any flexibility you can give to the business community and to the development community. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin Whitehead?
They are not in the room, Senator.
Okay. Philip Abraham? Is Phil there?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Phil.
Can you hear me?
Not too well, but barely.
Okay, I'll try and speak up.
There you go.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Phil Abraham, representing the Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate. Our members are in chapters in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and the greater Richmond area, involved in commercial industrial development. We strongly support this legislation. The impacts of COVID-19 have been significant on the ability of many localities to process applications, to hold hearings, and to conduct inspections. It's also slowed the ability of the development community to move projects forward. Some localities have even stopped accepting applications altogether during points in the pandemic. The impact of this developments are not going to be short term. It's going to be quite a while before things get back to normal. This legislation will give the development community and localities a reasonable time to bring active projects online. But it only applies to projects that were valid no earlier than July 1, 2015. We put the July 1, 2020 date in there so it would not apply to the earlier projects that were covered by the previous extension bills. So this is not applying to stale projects as stated by the other speaker. It is only to the more recent projects. We believe this is a reasonable approach and will give a reasonable amount of time for things to get back to normal and for these projects to move forward. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Did Mr. Whitehead join yet?
No, sir, but Eldon James is in the room.
All right, Eldon, you want to go ahead? Eldon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies. I'm still struggling with the technological changes along with most of the rest of us. I'm Eldon James. I'm here on behalf of the Virginia chapter of the American Planning Association. And we're expressing our opposition, Mr. Chairman, to your bill, SB 5106. Frankly, we're a little confused by the need for the legislation. After some initial disruptions back in the early spring, once the FOIA issues were clarified, planning commissions largely have continued to meet. and conduct business, take actions on pending land use applications and requests. Department staffs have continued to process applications and permit, conduct inspections, sometimes even virtually. In the short time these bills have been out in the ether, we have not been able to identify any denials of extension requests because someone needed more time due to the pandemic. In fact, we found just the opposite. Examples of efforts of both ministerial and legislative actions to grant extensions that were requested. Projects that are ready to move forward, we need those projects in our communities, and we've been supporting those. And
So Eldon, can I ask you a question?
sure.
If all these localities recognize the need for extensions, and if these projects are important to the localities, why don't we just extend everything out to July 1, 2022?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. We have a situation where confusion is being caused here. If a project expired in early July and the owner, the backer of the project didn't request an extension for whatever reasons, they had not to request it. Then all of a sudden, 4 months after the end of this special session, that's reinstated. We're not quite sure how all that works. And you know, that's part of the short turnaround for these bills and putting the word out to our membership. There's some mechanical issues there. Again, if it's a problem related to the pandemic where there was disruption back in the spring, somebody didn't get action taken, we don't have any problem with that. And it may be that a more legislatively, I guess what I'll say, surgically written bill would be better than the broad bill that we have here that captures everything that might have just expired and gone away because it was so many years old and it just didn't meet the market needs. And the owner never came in to make a request to extend it. Again, we haven't found any situation where somebody said, hey, look, we were getting ready to do it, but we got disrupted and we need a little more time. Again, we've found a number of examples where those have been granted, some that required legislative approval and some that could just be handled administratively. Okay. And for that, Mr. Chairman, we express our concern with the legislation.
Okay. Is Mr. Whitehead in the room yet?
No, sir. You have Andrew Clark remaining.
All right, well, we'll finish up with Andrew then. Andrew Clark.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association of Virginia. First, I'd like to note the Virginia Housing Alliance, Brian Kozel's group, does support this bill, but my comments are on behalf of, obviously, the Home Builders Association of Virginia. As was stated, this is really a stopgap measure that's been done in the past in trying economic times of uncertainty. It was done to stop the clock on the expiration of these approvals to give the
Andrew, Andrew, can you speak up a little bit? You're weak.
Yeah. Hang on, let me see if I can fix this. Is that better now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. So these were stopgap measures that were done in trying economic times. It was meant to give both the development community some time to evaluate what's going on in the economy, and when things return to normal or some sense of normalcy, allow them to proceed without having to reinvest the time and resources that they've already gotten to seek initial approval. And so obviously COVID has drastically changed the environment that we're in. And this bill is being put in for a similar purpose that we submitted the housing crisis extension bills. Prior to COVID, Harvard University released an assessment of the housing market and said the economy was strong, but the for sale and rental construction numbers were far behind what was actually needed to meet the demand, resulting in upward pressure on home prices and rents. And so to a previous speaker's comment, although construction has been strong, those were projects that were already in the pipeline, and thankfully construction was permitted to continue throughout this pandemic. But people are really concerned about the growing uncertainty about the pipeline of developable lots. So just as an example, in Northern Virginia, Back in April, Metro Study estimated that there was only a 20-month supply of finished lots that had road infrastructure already installed and were ready to be built on, which is pretty low for Northern Virginia. The pipeline that we're referring to that's kind of uncertain right now are the 21,000 lots in Northern Virginia that are in various stages of preliminary site work and about 70 to 80,000 lots that are still raw land. And so really by extending these validities, we can help minimize the disruption in the pipeline and make sure that a couple years down the road, we're not having a situation where our private sector and nonprofit housing providers are struggling to find lots. And in closing, I wanted to address a question that was brought up earlier about the scope of this bill compared to prior bills. This bill was intentionally drafted to not go all the way back to 2004 and extend those plans. It essentially, as one example under the draft, the oldest recorded plats and site plans that could be granted an extension are from 2015, which means they're operating under pretty recent stormwater management regs and local development standards. So this is not a continuation of those previous bills. This is simply things that were in the pipeline that hit a snag and thrown into this economic uncertainty. We'd like to give them a little more time to kind of evaluate things. So we hope you'd support the bill and we appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Any questions for any of the presenters, either pros or cons? Does anyone on the committee have any questions? All right, it's a simple concept. We've heard both sides. The bill 5106 is in front of us. It's been duly moved and seconded that Senate Bill 5106 be reported. Mr. Clerk, can you call the roll?
Senator Hanger, Senator Stanley, Senator Favola, Senator DeSteph, Senator Donovan, Senator Chase,
No.
Senator McPike, Senator Howe, Senator Spruill, Senator Morrissey, Senator Pillion, Senator Bell, Senator Hashmi, Senator Kiggins,
Aye.
Senator Lewis.
Aye.
9 ayes, 2 nays.
All right, with that, the bill reports. Has Senator Dee's bill rolled into it? We have no other bills on our docket, and unless anybody has anything else, we are adjourned. Thank you all.